Have you ever wondered why anxiety seems to arise at moments when everything is going well? Why, even with achievements, goals reached, and an apparently stable life, you still feel that tightness in your chest, the shortness of breath, and a sense that something is wrong, even when nothing is visibly wrong? What if I told you that this anxiety isn't an enemy, but rather a message? A desperate attempt from your soul to get your attention. Carl Jung, one of the greatest names in depth psychology, didn't see psychic symptoms as mere disturbances to be silenced. He believed that behind every suffering, there was a deeper truth. And anxiety, according to Jung, can be the soul screaming for integration, for transformation, for a reunion with your true self. In this video, we will dive into the deepest layers of your unconscious, understand what your anxiety wants to reveal, explore the hidden symbols in your fears, and in the end, you will no longer be the same person. Carl Jung revealed to us that the human psyche is not a unified, linear entity, but rather a complex structure divided primarily between two realms, the conscious and the unconscious. The conscious mind is the part we identify with most, our thoughts, decisions, plans, and the self-image we construct and present to the world. But beneath this surface lies the vast and often neglected unconscious, a reservoir of forgotten memories, repressed desires, unresolved emotional wounds, and latent potentials that we have yet to recognize or develop. Jung emphasized that this unconscious realm is not inert. It is alive, dynamic, and constantly interacting with the conscious mind, even if we are unaware of it. And when we consistently ignore, suppress, or reject essential aspects of ourselves, when we push aside emotions we find uncomfortable, deny desires that don't fit our persona, or bury traumas that remain unhealed, the unconscious does not remain silent. It responds. And one of the most powerful ways it responds is through anxiety. Anxiety in this context is not simply a disorder or a malfunction. It is a signal, a symptom that the inner equilibrium has been disturbed. It is the unconscious mind's way of alerting us to an internal conflict, a split between the life we are living and the life we are meant to live. Jung believed that when parts of the self are denied long enough, they begin to manifest indirectly. They appear in our behaviors, in our recurring thoughts, in our bodily symptoms, and most notably in that restless, intangible sense of dread we call anxiety. It is not the anxiety itself that is the enemy. The true crisis lies in what has been neglected to the point that it must now erupt into our awareness in the form of psychological distress. We are not speaking here about biological anxiety, the kind triggered by chemical imbalances, hormonal shifts, or reactions to external substances. That type of anxiety, while real and valid, belongs more to the realm of medical treatment and neurochemical regulation. What we are focusing on is something different, something more elusive and existential. It is the kind of anxiety that seems to emerge from a deeper place, one that cannot be traced to a specific event or easily diagnosed with a scan or a blood test. It is a quiet but persistent unrest, an internal agitation that does not go away, no matter how much you distract yourself, work harder, or attempt to maintain control. It is a sense of unease that follows you even in moments of apparent calm, a subtle yet piercing feeling that something is off, not in the world around you, but within you. You may feel like you're floating slightly outside yourself, disconnected from your surroundings, estranged even from your own identity. Life continues to unfold, and yet you move through it with a strange sense of distance, as if you're watching it rather than living it. This kind of anxiety does not come with a clear explanation. It is not always accompanied by racing thoughts or panic attacks. Often it is quiet and invisible, a lingering emptiness, a tightness in the chest, or a pressure that seems to have no physical source. It feels like something within you has fractured, not broken in a dramatic or visible way, but cracked just enough to let in a sense of confusion, vulnerability, and loss. You may not be able to name it, but you feel it in the pauses, in the silence, in the questions that come late at night when everything is supposed to be fine. For Jung, this is not merely discomfort or emotional instability. It is a symptom of psychic disintegration, a deep rupture within the self. It means that the unity of your inner world has been disturbed, that the different layers of your psyche are no longer aligned. At the core of this disturbance is the widening gap between who you truly are and the role you've been performing. Jung called this outward-facing role the persona, the mask you wear to meet the expectations of society, family, work, and even your own idealized self-image. The persona is not inherently false. It serves a purpose. It helps us navigate the social world, maintain relationships, and function within a collective reality. But the danger arises when you begin to confuse the persona with your true identity. When you over-identify with this mask, suppressing the deeper, more authentic parts of yourself, your instincts, emotions, dreams, wounds, and inner truths, the psyche begins to fracture. You become divided within, living outwardly in a way that no longer reflects your inner reality. In this context, anxiety becomes much more than a mental state. It is an existential alarm, a powerful message from the unconscious, attempting to break through the rigidity of the persona. It is the psyche's desperate cry for reintegration. The anxiety whispers and sometimes screams that you are not where you are supposed to be, that you have drifted too far from the essence of who you are meant to become. It is the soul's attempt to wake you up, to pull you back toward wholeness, to force you to confront the life you are living and the self you have abandoned. And this is precisely why conventional treatments often fall short. They aim to silence the symptoms without addressing the underlying message. Medication may dull the intensity, and behavioral strategies might help manage the external signs. But the deeper cry of the psyche remains unheard. From Jung's perspective, this approach is not only insufficient but potentially harmful in the long term because it encourages a kind of inner deafness. It teaches us to fear the symptom rather than understand it, to suppress rather than explore. Jung offers a radically different invitation, not to quiet the symptom, but to listen to it. He believed that psychological suffering, especially in forms as disruptive and persistent as anxiety, often signals the beginning of a deeper process of transformation. What appears to be breakdown may in fact be the first step toward breakthrough. The anxiety is not just a random dysfunction to be eliminated, but a message from the unconscious, a sign that something vital within us is trying to emerge. According to Jung, anxiety can mark the beginning of the process he called individuation. This is the inner journey of becoming who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who you pretend to be, but the full integrated self that unites both your conscious personality and your unconscious depths. It is a path that involves facing your shadow, reclaiming your forgotten potentials, and living in greater alignment with your inner truth. In this sense, anxiety is not the end of stability. It is the beginning of authenticity. It is the signal that the soul is calling you inward, urging you to abandon the illusion of control and begin the search for meaning. Within Jungian theory, the self represents the central point of the psyche, not just a part of who we are, but the totality of the human being. It is the organizing principle of our inner world, the deep unifying core that integrates both the conscious and unconscious aspects of the personality. The self is not the ego. While the ego governs our waking identity and rational decisions, the self is something far greater. It is the blueprint of wholeness, the guiding force behind our potential for inner harmony and meaning. However, approaching this center is not a passive journey. It does not occur simply through reflection or surface-level self-improvement. The path toward the self requires something far more difficult and courageous, a confrontation with the shadow. The shadow, in Jung's view, is composed of everything within us that we have rejected, denied, or repressed. These are the traits, emotions, memories, and instincts that we find unacceptable or threatening, not only to others, but to our own sense of who we are. Often, these shadow elements do not disappear. They are simply pushed into the unconscious, where they begin to influence our lives from the background. They appear in our projections, our emotional reactivity, our compulsions, and even our dreams. The more we ignore them, the more power they hold. Jung emphasized that no real growth or movement toward the self can occur without this honest confrontation. We must turn inward and face the parts of ourselves we have spent years trying not to see, the anger we suppress, the envy we pretend not to feel, the wounds we claim to have overcome but never truly healed. Only by shining light into these inner recesses, by acknowledging and integrating what we have kept hidden, can we move closer to that inner center. The self cannot be reached by avoidance. It demands authenticity, depth, and the willingness to encounter the full range of our inner experience, even the parts we wish weren't there. Anxiety, in many cases, is the first subtle or sometimes overwhelming indication that the shadow is beginning to stir beneath the surface. It is not simply a reaction to external stress, but an inner signal, a tremor from the depths of the psyche, warning that something long buried is pushing upward, seeking acknowledgement. What follows is a quiet, yet intense, inner conflict. On one side stands the conscious ego, the part of us that clings to familiarity, to the roles we've been trained to play, to the polished image we present to the world. This conscious self is deeply invested in maintaining control, order, and appearances. It resists change, especially when that change threatens to disrupt the identity it has worked so hard to construct. On the other side lies the unconscious, which does not speak in words or logical arguments, but communicates through emotion, symbol, and symptom. It begins to press forward when the balance within the psyche becomes unsustainable, when the repression of truth, of desire, of unresolved pain grows too heavy to contain. The unconscious demands authenticity, and anxiety becomes the battlefield where this demand plays out. The symptoms we experience, the restlessness, the racing thoughts, the tightening in the chest, are not meaningless. They are the language of a deeper intelligence within us, an attempt to break through the rigidity of the conscious mind and bring to light something essential that has been ignored. This inner struggle can feel disorienting, even frightening. The conscious self wants stability and predictability, while the unconscious insists on transformation. And in that tension, anxiety becomes a messenger, not of weakness or failure, but of the profound need for inner alignment. It is often in this very space of discomfort that the most important psychological work begins. The shadow, once feared and suppressed, now demands to be seen, to be heard, and ultimately, to be integrated. This is why so many people experience deep psychological crises in adulthood, moments of collapse that seem to come out of nowhere, but are in fact the result of years, sometimes decades, of living a life shaped by external expectations rather than inner truth. From early childhood, we learn to adapt in order to belong. We mold ourselves to fit family ideals, social norms, cultural definitions of success, and the silent pressure to be agreeable, responsible, or productive. Over time, this adaptation becomes a kind of second skin, a persona, as Jung called it, the mask we wear to navigate the outer world. But beneath that mask, the authentic self waits. It watches as we make choices that do not align with our deepest values, as we pursue careers that leave us empty, maintain relationships that suffocate us, or live lifestyles that feel hollow despite their outward success. The soul, that central, mysterious essence of who we are, can tolerate suppression for a time, but it was never meant to be caged indefinitely. And as Jung warned, the soul does not submit quietly forever. When the tension between the life we live and the life we are meant to live becomes too great, something gives way. The unconscious, having been ignored and denied for too long, erupts. And this eruption does not come as a polite suggestion. It often comes as crisis, through anxiety, depression, disillusionment, or a sudden inability to continue with the roles we once performed so easily. It is not punishment, but a demand for liberation. The soul, when imprisoned too long, does not whisper. It roars. And what feels like breakdown is, in truth, the psyche's desperate attempt to break free from a false identity and return to something real. What is striking is that many people, after confronting their anxiety, not with denial but with depth and honesty, begin to describe a transformation that feels almost like a return to themselves. It is not that the anxiety simply vanishes, but rather that it reveals something, a message, a direction, a truth that had long been buried beneath layers of conditioning and fear. When they stop resisting the discomfort and instead choose to sit with it, explore it, and ask what it might be pointing toward, something begins to shift internally. These individuals often report feeling a new sense of freedom, not the superficial freedom of doing whatever one wants, but a deeper, more grounded kind of liberation, the freedom of being aligned with one's own nature. They become more connected to their inner voice, more honest in their relationships, and more willing to make choices that reflect who they truly are, rather than who they were taught to be. And this shift, though painful at first, marks the beginning of an entirely new relationship with the self. What they come to realize is that the anxiety was never the enemy. It was never a random malfunction or a sign of weakness. It was a messenger, a signal from the soul that something vital was being neglected, that the life they were living was out of step with their inner truth. And when they finally stop running and listen, they hear what the soul had been trying to say all along. You need to change. You need to remember who you are. This moment of recognition becomes a doorway, not into comfort, but into authenticity, into a life where inner and outer worlds can begin to come into alignment. And what exactly is this symbol? It is the symbol of discordance, a profound misalignment between the life you are living and the feeling stirring within you, between the mask you wear for the world and the true self you conceal beneath it. This dissonance creates a tension so palpable that it manifests as anxiety, a signal that the internal rhythm no longer matches the external reality. Jung described anxiety not merely as a disorder or weakness, but as a harbinger of transformation, a threshold moment that precedes the emergence of a new stage in one's psychological development. It signals the potential birth of a new identity, one that is more authentic, integrated, and aligned with the depths of your being. However, like any birth, this process is not gentle or comfortable. It demands pain, the tearing away of old patterns, beliefs, and defenses that no longer serve you. It requires rupture, a breaking away from familiar structures and identities that, while safe, are ultimately restrictive. And it calls for confrontation, facing the unknown territory within yourself, stepping into shadows you may have long avoided. This journey into the unfamiliar is daunting precisely because it threatens the sense of security provided by the old self. Yet it is essential for growth. The anxiety you experience is the painful echo of this inner upheaval, the psychological equivalent of labor contractions, signaling that something new is about to be born from the depths of your soul. That is why, instead of fleeing from anxiety, Jung proposes a process of attentive listening, a conscious engagement with the inner world rather than avoidance. He encourages us to enter into a dialogue with ourselves, to create a space where the unconscious can speak and be heard. This dialogue is not superficial. It requires patience, honesty, and a willingness to confront what may be uncomfortable or unfamiliar. One of the primary tools Jung offers for this process is the careful analysis of dreams, those rich tapestries of symbols and images that arise from the depths of the unconscious. Dreams serve as a bridge between the conscious mind and the hidden parts of the psyche, offering clues and guidance in symbolic form. Beyond dreams, Jung also emphasizes symbolic reflection, the practice of contemplating myths, art, and personal experiences with an eye toward uncovering their deeper meanings. This reflection helps decode the language of the unconscious, revealing the messages the soul tries to send through anxiety and other symptoms. Rather than seeing anxiety as a problem to be fixed or a demon to be expelled, this approach invites us to regard it as a vital communication, an inner compass guiding us toward wholeness. By embracing this process of listening and interpretation, we begin to translate the cryptic language of our soul, uncovering truths that can lead to healing, growth, and a more authentic life. You will not heal your anxiety simply by distracting yourself, repeating affirmations, or running away from the discomfort. True healing comes through integration, a deep, courageous willingness to turn inward and face what has long been hidden or denied. It requires an honest confrontation with those parts of yourself that have been forgotten, wounded, or neglected over time. These aspects of your psyche may carry pain, shame, or fear, but they are essential pieces of your whole being. By giving them the space to exist and be acknowledged, you begin to weave them back into the fabric of your consciousness. This process demands bravery because it challenges the protective walls built around your identity. It means allowing yourself to feel vulnerability without judgment, to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. Only through this embrace can the fractured parts of your soul start to heal and harmonize. Integration is not about forcing yourself to be better or fixed, but about becoming whole, accepting the fullness of your humanity, both light and shadow. In doing so, the anxiety that once shouted for attention becomes a quiet messenger, guiding you gently toward inner balance and self-acceptance. True peace arises from integration, the profound process of allowing yourself to become whole, embracing not only the parts of you that are visible and accepted by others, but also the hidden, neglected, or rejected aspects of your being. It is a courageous journey of self-acceptance that goes beyond conforming to external expectations or societal roles. Instead, it invites you to reclaim your authentic self in its full complexity, with all its contradictions, vulnerabilities, and strengths. In this light, anxiety can be understood not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as the threshold of this profound reunion with yourself. It is the initial tremor that shakes the foundations of your identity, urging you to look inward, to face what you have avoided, and to open the door to transformation. Anxiety marks the beginning of a path toward wholeness, a painful yet necessary step in the unfolding of your true self. Through this process, the fragmented pieces of your psyche gradually come together, creating a sense of inner harmony that transcends fleeting moments of calm and touches the very core of your existence. Jung famously said, "What you most need will be found in the place you least want to look." This insight reveals a profound truth about the nature of personal growth and healing. Often, the very parts of ourselves that we fear facing, the uncomfortable memories, the unresolved wounds, the hidden desires, are precisely where the key to transformation lies. Anxiety, in this sense, acts as a relentless guide, gently but persistently pushing us toward that difficult inner territory. It disrupts our routines, shakes our sense of security, and forces us to confront what we might otherwise avoid. Instead of resisting this impulse, denying its presence, or trying to escape its discomfort, Jung encourages us to shift our stance toward openness and curiosity. to stop fighting the signal and start listening attentively to what our inner world is trying to communicate. This means acknowledging the fear and uncertainty that accompany this process without immediately labeling them as threats. It means allowing ourselves to be vulnerable enough to explore the shadowy corners of our psyche, trusting that within them reside the seeds of healing and self-discovery. Only by moving toward the place we least want to look can we begin to uncover the truths that will ultimately set us free. Take a moment now to truly reflect. When you experience anxiety, what exactly are you repressing deep within yourself? What part of your inner world remains unheard, ignored, or denied? Which choice, decision, or truth are you actively avoiding because it feels too overwhelming or painful to face? These are not simple questions, but essential invitations to pause and turn your attention inward. In the stillness of that silence, away from distractions and noise, you allow yourself to feel the subtle stirrings beneath the surface. Those emotions, sensations, and thoughts that your conscious mind might habitually suppress or dismiss. Give yourself permission to slow down and listen carefully to what arises. Take out a pen and paper and begin to write down whatever comes to you without judgment or censorship. This process of honest inquiry and expression opens a door to self-awareness and insight. What initially feels like a daunting confrontation with your shadows can, with time and patience, transform into a powerful act of self-liberation. That single question, "What am I repressing?" holds the potential to unlock new paths, fresh perspectives, and a deeper connection to your authentic self. It is often in this moment of sincere reflection that the seeds of a new life are sown. Anxiety is not the end. Rather, it can mark the beginning of a profound journey towards self-discovery, healing, and a deeper connection to something far beyond the masks you wear daily. Carl Jung provided us with a symbolic map, a pathway to navigate the complex terrain of the unconscious mind. This map invites us to dive beneath the surface of our conscious awareness and encounter the lost, forgotten, or hidden parts of ourselves that long to be acknowledged and integrated. Each time anxiety arises, it serves as a signal, a subtle yet urgent message from the depths of your soul. It is an invitation to pause and reflect. What is my soul trying to communicate in this moment? Instead of fleeing from the discomfort or attempting to silence these feelings, Jung encourages us to approach anxiety with curiosity and openness, treating it not as an enemy, but as a guide, leading us toward greater wholeness. This shift in perspective transforms anxiety from a source of suffering into a powerful catalyst for growth, guiding us on an inner voyage toward authenticity and self-understanding. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you resonated with this message. So write in the comments, "I listened to my soul." This helps me know that you stayed until the end and that you're ready to begin this process of individuation. And if this journey makes sense to you, click now on the next video that will appear on your screen. There, we will dive even deeper into Jung's teachings about dreams and the symbols that appear to guide your transformation. I'll be waiting for you there.